My name is Henry Brune. I'm here in the auditorium of this great school, Valley View High School. And I was asked a very, very sensitive question of what music means to me and what it's done for me, in my life. To be able to put it in words is that music changed my life and made me who I am today. I was an extrovert when I was in high school, but yet very shy in many other aspects. Now, the one thing that always brought me out of my shell was playing music. And that alone was something that I'd yet to know how to handle it at the time. And little did I know what it would do for me over the years. So I always had this passion for music and I wanted to continue pursuing it. And I did so. The first opportunity I had to play, as long as I closed my eyes, I could play eternally because I had the concern of fear, people, reactions, and things like that. But the more I played, the more confident I became. And it turned me to be the person that I am now. You can't shut me up. I love talking, especially I love talking about music. Music has been my life. It's the pulse that wakes me up in the morning. It's the lull that puts me to bed at night. And I couldn't live without my instrument. I have instruments all over the house, and it just becomes an extension of my body. And it speaks. Whatever I don't say in words is being said through whatever sounds I create, out of music. It's the best career I could have ever had. If you take it serious and you apply yourself to it, and you invest the time that you need to invest into it, the sky's the limit. You can do what you need to do through music. You can do the speaking. You can project any emotion, anything you want through your music. And believe it or not, when it's a creative aspect happening there, the music is going to happen. It's going to be beautiful. Music is a way to speak to the rest. And when the music is universal, there's no words that can be translated out of music except emotions. Emotions are the ones that control how your body feels. Your body feels what your mind is creating. That creation is tied in with the expression of what you're trying to say through the instrument. Without getting complicated, your instrument is your real voice, and you don't have to say a single word to express everything you have in yourself. If you apply yourself to play and you take it serious enough, you'll be surprised of what the rewards will be. Music is a beautiful career. I would change it for anything in the world. The other aspect of it, I've loved having the opportunity to share with all of you on the educational side. I've been blessed to learn a lot in music, and I love taking what I know and passing it on because that's a gift from above. We need to share what we have because you'll be surprised. If everybody has a little bit of happiness, this world will be 10 times better than what it is today.
he he was very concerned about uh, the healthcare situation going on right now, and he mentioned to me, and this is a doctor friend, a friend of mine that commented this yesterday for me, and he was saying that there are so many people coming up with COVID at the moment, that it's crazy, it's ridiculous, it's scary, and uh, please urge your friends, urge your family to get vaccinated and stay safe. So many people are getting affected, and as soon as this school happens to open up, he goes, unfortunately, that there seems to be like it's going to explode. So please be on the lookout. Please get vaccinated. Please. So, friends, and this comes from love, from personally from me to you. Stay safe. Uh, get your vaccine. You wear your mask. Take your precautions. Protect your family. Protect yourself. Again, this is with love. No politics, guys. No politics whatsoever. None. Just me speaking from my heart to you directly, because I care for you, and I want to be able to see you and hang out with you for many, many, many years to come. Um, with that said, uh, I guess rant over. It's not really a rant. It was just a message I'm sharing with you. Um, Guys, I hope you had a great week, and that your weekend is starting off to be a smooth one. Smooth one. Super stoked about today's guest. Uh, legendary, legendary is the only way that I can describe him. Phenomenal. Uh, let's just say this, guys, that our heroes, I know my heroes, and for sure I know that your heroes happen to be his students. And we call them heroes, he calls them students. And he's been sharing some of this experiences that he's had with them. Amazing. He needs no further introduction. Guys, let's welcome the legendary Bruce Becker. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Gilbert. Thank you for the nice introduction. Appreciate that.
Well, sir,
I would say I don't call them students too. I call them legends too when I see them. It's very humbling, some of the guys who I've been able to interact with, but they are my students. But we're all students. I still consider myself a student of the art as well. There's never a point where I put the sticks down and go, and I got it together. There's always something to kind of entice me and get me motivated, and put me on a pad for a little while on a quest to kind of figure something out, or drum set and figure something out, etc. So
yes. Yes, it's pretty incredible what technology has allowed us to do now.
Yes.
You're in California.
Yeah.
I'm in the southmost portion of Texas, literally bordering Mexico, and we just shrunk the world. And I'm in your office, you're in my office.
That's right.
And everybody else is joining us here. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Bruce, really quick, sir. Could you mention some of your students that happen to be in your roster?
Oh yeah. So well, let's see. Past students that I had a very young Glenn Sobel study with me for a couple years when he was a kid. I was his first teacher. I got him started. That's going 40 years back, almost 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not quite, but about 40 years. I started, I always put the year date of 82 as my official date of starting teaching, but it's not really true. I did teach before that, but I started at this great shop called the Music Stop. And that store was the home of early teaching of Freddie Gruber. He started there. Terry Gibbs, the great vibist, and a great drummer by the name of Mel Zelnick started the store. And Terry gave Freddie a shot because Freddie was kind of floundering here. And that's where Freddie kind of really started to connect, and where he, worked with guys like John Hernandez from Oingo Boingo and Mike Baird. Who else? Don Lombardi. Don Lombardi from Drum Workshop was a long time student of Freddie's, and et cetera. So anyway, I started teaching there. So Glenn would have been one. Later years, I had Mark Schulman study with me on and off a little bit. Daniel Glass was a student of mine for a few years back in the later 2007, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
More recently, Tristan Bowden from the band Chicago, although now he has left the band a couple of years back, but he was with them for 28 years, as well as Al Jarreau and Kenny Loggins. It doesn't get any better than that, then, as far as like a touring and a career in terms of resumes, man.
Yes.
Who else? David Garibaldi. Stayed with me for a couple years. Some other guys from different bands. I have the drummer from the band Semisonic, Jake Slichter. Jiro Yamaguchi from Ozo Motley was a student of mine for about 3.5 or 4 years. And he didn't play drum set before that. He was a percussionist. He came to me with very limited drum set skills.
Oh, wow.
He just felt it was time for him to take the chair because I believe, as I recall, he was, and the band in general, was kind of always hiring guys, and they never felt that that drummer really fulfilled the whole totality. And they were hired guns, the drummers.
Yeah.
And so Jiro just said, we have 2 percussionists. Let me step aside and let me play drum set. And I saw them play, just about, and now it's already probably 2 or 3 years ago. But when I saw them play, I was like really proud of how Jiro really owned that band. I know that it's their music and that's his expression, but he really, what we were working on really helped facilitate what he needed to help drive that band.
Wow.
And it was really great. And a very cool band, super funky and Latin-y and, just a joy to watch. You want to dance in your seat,
Yes.
And Gabe Ford from Little Feet studied with me for a few years. I don't know. So a lot of guys, I don't really think about if I do my Freddie Gruber impression, Freddie would say like, I don't know. He plays with the 5 coconuts, the 6 giraffes. Who knows? But I don't get caught up in that. In other words, I look at my schedule. I know who I have to work with, and everybody's an equal member of my team. I'm super diligent about how I craft and comprehensively build people's chops or rebuild in some cases. What I would like to say is that, a good portion of my students, probably about 60 to 70%, are guys in their 50s and 60s. And so the reason for me saying that, you young guys, is you can always continually grow. And if you're, sort of doing things in a less mindful fashion and a way that might not be as efficient, you might run yourself into troubles later on. So my job is to basically put forward, the kind of extend somebody's shelf date, their expiration date, so they can continue to play, grow, and be fluid with their delivery system. There's a misnomer about having to hit. We don't really have to hit the drum. You can work with the stick and fall with it, and you'll probably get a better acoustic tonality out of the drum set. If you think about, if you tried to bash a conga with your hand, you're going to break fingers. You don't do that. There's an acoustic relationship with how you strike a conga for a conga slap or an open tone or a dead tone. And then there's same constructs for classical percussion, how to strike concert bass drum, timpani. All that stuff is about kind of coming off the surface and drawing the sound out of the instrument instead of bashing and thrusting into it.
If I may ask you something, Bruce, so you would describe the stroke as falling into the surface?
If I lift up and, a lot of the things that I would construct for movement, the way I built up the essence of choreographing what you do, every sticking or every rudiment is going to have some outline of a choreography. It might have a few different ways of orchestrating that, depending upon what the sticking is. But in a fundamental fashion, you could basically pose a specific choreography to own up to all our rudiments. And I can demonstrate that all, but I don't want to go through all of that right now. But so when you are lifting and dropping, I would say that that's a byproduct of your molar method, that sleek, nice locomotive action. And the stick has its own weight factor, and you just want to harmonize with that and fall to that drum. And look how that stick pops to me instead of me thrusting down. If I thrust down, a couple things happen. Well, I take a vibration into my wrist or my forearm or my fingers. you also basically kind of push that sound into the drum and shock it. If you can draw out of it, you'll get a bigger sound. So, and
Yes.
you can't have that perfect execution on every factor, but when you build it up from a specific fundamental, you can bring it forward so that even at faster tempos, it still reacts in harmony with that concept. You know, because if I was doing a Moeller thing and I'm going to play just, 16th notes, if I did it slow and I want to get like some of the inside of the hand pressure points to really emerge and play, let that stick pop into the hand and then let it drop and slowly lift it up to, sit in that locomotive action. Well, if I tried to kind of suck it into my hand, that's kind of like me running 50 miles an hour and my foot gets stuck in mud and I fly forward. So at a real fast tempo, there's going to be a little bit of a shift and change. So momentum will give you the insight as to what part of the anatomy needs to help to motor that along and bring it to the next gear. So, you can play fingers, you can play them slow and flimsy, but that's really not going to be effective for some of the things you might want to do. For Moeller, there's not really any fingers. It's a forearm locomotive action, and the wrist and the stick, how it's placed inside the hand, should give a good bounce. But that's got a limitation. If I really wanted to push it ahead, well, now I've rolled out, I'm in a little bit more of an American position, and that access a little bit more of the economy of pushing the fingers into that, still with the locomotive action. So I still have my forearm kind of helping me drive that, but I have the fingers as a little second engine underneath the propelling of my forearm. So, again, those little nuances I cover in great detail. I was very fortunate to spend many painful years with Freddie Gruber. And I say painful. I mean, there was good times, and Freddie was a handful. He was a very difficult guy. But I would say that, in the scheme of people out there in the world, I was probably one of the closest guys that you could be to Freddie. I was on that inner circle of Freddie. I lived with him. I traveled with him when I lived over in Europe. I did clinics with him. I watched him teach. He would have me come over and play for a myriad of guys. And as annoying as that could be from time to time, when you're asked to come over and play for Dave Weckl, it's not a pleasant thought. You're going, what am I going to play for this guy that he hasn't even already played or heard, or what impression? But what I did realize back then, that was about 25 or 26 years ago, that that looseness, that element that I took for granted because I started at a young age, I was about 19. That was a sought after commodity. I didn't realize the value of that. And, because tension is tension. Now, that doesn't mean you want to be loosey-goosey all the time, because there was that factor that as I progressed and was working with my brother in our early days, we went out and had record deals with Mesa Blue Moon and MCA Jazz. And, we were just out there on the road doing our thing. I would say my looseness was a great asset, but it didn't oftentimes give me the point and definition of certain things that I was looking for. And so there was this after effect where I had to draw in and think about different dialects, whether it's R&B or different kinds of jazz players, and kind of extract the nuance conceptually and figure out, well, how can I sort of stay in a loose vein, but not let it sit down to the cymbal like a spaghetti noodle and not give any like point or definition. And so that took a little while to really construct like what that was. First and foremost, I didn't even know that was the thing, in terms of how I was processing things. It took me my years of studying R&B and blues players and other jazz players that I didn't pay attention to in my younger years to kind of formulate that, playing a lot of gigs, teaching, doing sessions, all that stuff. I would just say was like the big mix, the big cake mix that brought me to be able to, one, express it in good terminology, but also figure out like, what are the mechanics behind that? Because you could play 16th notes and you could play in a French grip, Moeller, a French Moeller. So maybe people haven't heard that terminology, but from my definition, Moeller is nothing more than a locomotive action. So it exists, of course, in German. but it does exist in French. It exists if we're going to just identify my slightly rolled out forearm and the space between my thumb and index finger as just as a labeling effect, so we can have a conversation, as an American position, and of course traditional grip. All that's just a locomotive action. I'm just kind of spinning and moving the stick and trying to create the path of least resistance with some sense of impact or density to the stroke. So, I could do it in French. I could do it in German. I could do it a little bit in the hybrid American. I could do it in the push-pull method. I could do it in the pull-push, which is just backwards. Now, in general, that would give me a little bit more of a relationship to a shuffle, because the way I would play a shuffle would be a push to pull or a pull to push. You're pushing on the you're pulling on the numbers. And again, those are just paths of least resistance. The push-pull effect of a shuffle would allow me to feel like the inner double. So you could play an inverted double stroke roll. Well, that's something if you were playing like that. Well, those are just double stroke rolls, but they're now inverted. And the breakdown of that, of course, that's a little more ghosted and brought down volume-wise. But that would bring me into the idea of a wristed double and using that, what I just say is the automated close, drop and close, or push to pull, however you want to label it. It depends on how I construct an exercise. I have different labelings of directives just so that we're shooting in a place of like reference points. I know they're my reference points, but I try to draw very clear as to what they are so that the student is able to, Becker calls it that. That's what that is. Okay, that's the name of that. Like, okay, this is a phone. We just agreed. It's called a phone, or these are glass. It's just labeling, kind of taking the
terminology.
Yeah, like neuro-linguistic kind of programming where you have word choices that bring and emote certain thoughts. You're just trying to like connect. And that is something that I've really learned and honed my skills on because I taught in Europe for many years, and those people are not English speakers. They're not native English speakers. So I would even go into a space where if I was in Germany, if they say something that would be let's say a mass of people would speak that same way of an English sentence sort of backwards or turn the words around because it's a direct translation, in which I could say, that I've heard a million times. I would speak that sentence. I wouldn't correct them. No need to correct. I know what they're saying.
Yes.
It didn't throw me off. We're talking about communicating now. Now you're talking about taking a picture from here and being descriptive with it. So years ago, there was a lady, I can't remember her name, and I don't even remember the actress that portrayed her, but there was a movie about her, and she was an autistic woman who worked in the like the food industry for farming. And I remember she was being interviewed by Terry Gross on that show, Fresh Air. And she said, it's remarkable. You really don't sound like you're autistic. Well, she did speak in a kind of a little bit of a broken monotonal kind of way. And she said, how is it that you communicate so clearly? And she said, I narrate from pictures. And I laughed. My jaw hit the floor and I just went, wow, that's what I've been doing for years. That was my really having a picture clearly in my head and just going around and describing what's going on, which led me to be more detailed and find, some constructive word usage as well as exercises. You could say to somebody, anybody, you can go, hey man, just hold the stick like this. Bring your thumb in, hold your fingers like that, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to eradicate anybody's tension. They're going to go, that mentally people will accept that. They'll go, well, of course, I don't want to play with tension. So how do I get there? Well, I have progressive steps to kind of rebuild and reshape the hand if you see it as a piece of clay. And just add water and smooth it out. There's nothing that I could say or do in 1 second that's going to make a change. And if you guys or anybody that's listening right now or gals, if you think about anything you wanted to make a really, really, major change in your life, there's no way that you could just flip the switch and do it from one day to the next. It takes time, patience, and tenacity to sit with it, to construct. So if you're looking to change your game in drumming, it's not about a quick fix like, here, I've got 3 hacks that'll change you by tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. It's about staying dedicated to the process and not allowing your, your discipline or your confidence to be knocked off. It's not about you and the other drummers on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. It's about you and you building up this relationship and what you can do to facilitate what you want to do musically, and make that path of least resistance really step forward, so that you really have this essence of flow to what you do. You don't have to be a complex player. I'm not about changing somebody's identity and going, oh, well, you're only a rock and roll guy, so you better change and become a jazz guy. I do think that it's important and valuable to learn from the larger landscape of musics and contributors from our instrument, to look at them and see what is valuable and what you could learn and ascertain from them, and bring into your sphere of playing or musicianship. And so, I think everybody in general, like even my, straight ahead rock and roll guys, they all want to have like faster singles. And you go, well, I understand that. And I don't dismiss it, but I laugh in kindness. In other words, I'm laughing at myself too. I want to have good singles. Well, why? Because one, I want to have my whole total hand developed. So I don't want to skirt that responsibility. But in the scheme of playing singles, it's not often that you're going boom, bap, doom, bap, doom, and playing like just straight, flat out, open throttled singles. They do have a certain, a nice feel to get our fingers moving, get the gears shifting nicely and the blood flowing, and feel that good relationship of fingers to stick. But in the grander scheme of things, it's not going to be the larger band of what we do. So, being conscientious of that, I still build those elements and want to promote that and put forward, like I said, very comprehensive steps. That's the one thing I can say. I could give you, off my phone, 50 students right now that are currently studying with me, right? Probably even more than that, of course, I know that, but that have been with me long enough that'll go, oh yeah, man, it's like I've made so much progress, and my tone has changed. My fluidity has changed. I feel a greater sense of relaxation. I'm able to do like a 3-set gig without being fatigued and walking off the stage at the end of the night going, oh, and that's lovely to hear. That really, I'm always, listening and wanting to get feedback from everybody so that I know that I'm in the right arena with them. So a couple things that I would put forward is, in my general approach, I start with the French grip, and I start there because it is, the last frontier of balance of the stick. And there's nothing really obstructing that. There's no necessity to get into like, oh, what's the wrist going to do and how am I going to hold the stick? When you get into German, those fingers kind of contour nicely underneath the body of the stick. You create that nice acoustic shell. And you do that in French too, but you may not see it from that perspective. But in French grip, that setup would dictate a few anatomical features to really build up the anatomical relationship and support of what you want from the stick. There are certain stabilities that need to be adhered to. If I'm going to push singles out, I need my thumb to be stable. If it's wonky and moving around and not stable, I don't have anything firm to push against. At the same time, if I'm doing like, doing like a molar in the American thing, well, okay, there's a little finger there, but there's a certain threshold of drop that I want to have with my forearm that, again, is going to create a stability. Or if I'm looking at getting from the German perspective, what I call the kick up, for me to get the best essence of that stick tip meeting the pad and getting the impact and working with that energy, you realize we're getting energy. In some cases, when you play a floor tom, you're not getting a real good rebound. You have to be the director of that energy. You have to give it the right assistance to allow that energy to be directed and give you what you need out of that stroke. And so again, those details are definitely fine-tuned. But going back to my thought here with the forearm, when I strike down here, my forearm drops right to this threshold, and I don't drop here, and I don't jump back with the stick. That being said, I might bounce with my forearm for another exercise. So I take into consideration like very comprehensive moves, building them into a calisthenic structure whereby you get a chance to sort of immerse yourself in it and start to recognize certain attributes, become more mindful, build up that level of equanimity where you're standing above what you're doing and you're able to, see the sticking, see the movement, hear the rhythm, feel the tonality and the breath and the resonant quality out of the stick. That takes a minute because if I give you 6 directives right off the bat, your head's going to melt. You're going to go, what? So again, for me to skirt that, I'm very comprehensive about how I do that with my students. Everybody knows my inside track of what I do. So anyway, back to the French grip. If I have that stick seated in the balanced position, and if we just look at a good old-fashioned Vic Firth stick, my choice, a double glaze 5A, because it's got that nice coating, lacquer finish, sticks in the hand beautifully, no slipping and sliding. And as I've gotten older, that can be an issue. I want to sit on that flag to recognize that is the place that's going to divide that stick up into roughly 2/3 to 1/3. And there's, of course, you can always nuance it. But if I just slide back a little bit, so I'm maybe just, I don't know, not quite half an inch, maybe just maybe about half an inch beyond that flag behind it, and I drop, listen to the tonality. Kind of like a lead weight. Okay, if I just bounce up again to my flag, so I get that tone and that bounce, and I want to be able to work with that. That is crucial to finding, again, the path of least resistance. So in the French grip, there's, again, some positionings. I want my shoulder to be relaxed. Of course, I can raise my shoulder. I just don't want to get that to be locked. There's nothing wrong with having the support of your shoulder up. But if you take the stick out of your hand, you walk off the gig and you're walking out to your car like this, there's a problem. So I want to have that flexibility of bringing my shoulders in when they need to be brought in and letting them go. So with a relaxed shoulder, my elbow slightly out, and I always put this little reference point is if I take that stick from my elbow into, my torso a little bit and my from there to my shoulder and then shoulder back down to elbow, just keep an eye on that little triangle and kind of see that. If you drop and collapse here, no triangle, it's probably going to put you in the wounded puppy paw position. And that's not going to be any kind of an advantage to push that stick around. That wrist in French grip is not used. This is not the wrist. This is the forearm. So radius ulna. I want to activate them so that they are one factor of response to a bouncing stick. So if you think of your forearm as the shaft of a bass drum pedal and your stick is the beater ball, that's one component of getting a nice open bounce in French grip. So that being said, with that elbow slightly out and my wrist just slightly below my elbow, and if you look at my thumb, it should be an extension of my forearm. So it's, whoops, I got to get that lined up with the camera. There we go. I got a nice alignment there. Stick sits over the last joint of the index finger with a slightly curled index finger. Back 3 fingers, let's just say they're contoured, not cradling, and certainly not wide open to accept the stick in the bed of the back 3 fingers, the middle of the ring, and towards the last joint or pinky finger print for support. Even when I play single strokes, I'm not going to try to draw my fingers on there like I'm playing, like a flute or something like that, or a recorder. They're going to lay over that stick a little bit with a good, solid, supportive push. German, another little detail. They will curl and contour, and I do want to sit over those fingerprints. But here, French grip really doesn't pose the technical, fireworks that you can get out of German. German, you can really get things burning, or American, which would have a little bit of both. But I kind of rest a little bit more in that American position as time has gone on because it's most functional for what I do. But if I'm working on something very specific, like let's, for example, this one, 3-stroke rough paradiddles. So my position would be more correct of being palmed down. So I can feel that good vertical draw to the squeeze factor to produce a clean 3-stroke rough. You know, the old style of three-stroke rough, somebody would put forward, a Jimmy, a Freddie, would be up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down. Well, that works for the outline of a 5-stroke roll, but in reality, that's not the most efficient way to put that there. Think of the 3-stroke rough, 2 grace notes and a dominant note. When I play the grace notes, I want them to be as butted up to that dominant note as I can. Remember, they are grace notes. You don't practice flams like you immediately are trying to find that good space value between your dominant note and your grace note. So why would I go? I have a better way of doing that. If I use the push-pull method, I cascade into that. So that, anyway, that's what the German brings. It brings out those little articulations that can really be built better from that positioning, whether it's a paradiddle diddle diddle, paradiddles, or inverted paradiddles, or drags, flam taps. I'm going to mostly sit in that, and I might augment a little bit. In French, I can do that, but if I really start to go faster, I'm going to go into a cradle position, and I would say that's only German sideways, and I don't get the nice direction of the stick. The stick is now going to be slicing at an angle. And so if I did slice at an angle, it would boop, bounce the other way. And I want to get conditioned to feel that stick working in harmony with me, so I build up a relationship of the inside bounce and conduct, again, directing the energy. So when you get that French grip together, a couple things that I would work on would be, you know, the delivery system of French grip molar. Get a nice, easy lift. Don't lift from the shoulder. Don't let your elbow get ahead of you. Toss that stick up in the air. Get a natural follow through and feel the weight value of the stick. Feel how that weight value comes to a place of recognition of instead of, you know, like, again, like a heavy weight, nothing. Or if I'm too high on the stick, it's like helium in the stick. And as Goldilocks said, this one's just right. And work with that. That's one step. Another step would be conditioning the pressure point inside my hand. So when I make this squeeze, I'm kind of drawing that stick into the bed of my back 3 fingers. And if I just examine my hand position and go, well, where am I? Well, I've got a posted thumb. Like the thumb is not pressing from the thumbprint. I'm kind of locking my thumb into being one solid unit. Again, a stabilizer for singles, for push-pull method, a variety of different things. There is some flux in there. It's not going to stay static and just be in a tense position. That's not going to get anybody to the finish line. So when I do that pressure point, I just want to point out, here I am. If I just draw my ring and pinky finger and bring that stick just to that outer corner of my palm, that little pad, right off center from the center of the palm. If I look at these two halves as thumb side or outer corner of the palm side and thumb side, those two halves are being sort of developed and they're bridging together to bring a pressure point back here. If I just take from my French grip A and go, bap, there I am. I'm right in the German position, same hand shape. If I do it in traditional grip, let's just go one step further. Here's my traditional grip step squeeze, step one. Look at my hand. Oh, there's that thumb again. Okay, I can go right into my German position or my French grip position. You know, it's all being built on some of the same pressure points and identifying those, again, so that you have an inner understanding. I don't expect everybody to become, you know, like a studier of anatomy and going to, you know, medical school and working on your hand and knowing all the bones and all the muscles. I don't know anything about that. I know nothing. What I do know is how things feel. And what I do know is how things can work and make it effective and efficient. And what I do know from 40 years of teaching is how to track right inside what somebody's doing with laser sharp pinpoint accuracy of observation, because I've been doing it for so long. I'm not just sitting here sleeping at the wheel. It's been a passion of mine since I was a kid. I already had that sort of kind of makeup. I was already trying to figure out how to throw a pitch by watching, you know, MLB Game of the Week and watching all the pitchers of the day. trying to figure out like what their delivery was, or watching batting stances from different guys and imitating, and on and on and on. I mean, that was just a headspace I had. I don't know, precisely how that came about. I know my dad was a pretty, rigid guy and had observations and stuff like that. And he was also a magician, sleight of hand, card trick guy. Very good. And, there's a lot of thought process and maneuvering and posture gesture there as well. So maybe, I don't know. But my head was always technically inclined. I thought that if I had the greatest technique, I could be the greatest drummer. That's not true. You can have the greatest technique. That does not really make you the greatest musician. Musicianship is also brought forward by, yes, having great technical facility, but also listening and playing and having an adaptable headspace to kind of find the nuance or the dialect in what you're doing, And so anyway, you can limber up your arms and hands and wrists and delivery systems to bring about an easier access to those dialects. You might be going, geez, man, I'm playing like for 20 years, and why can't I get those 16th notes just to go ba-da-dee-dee, da-da-dee, 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 like Gadsden, James Gadsden. There's a mechanical breakdown. There's an overview of what you're doing anatomically to bring that forward. So if you are, in a state where you feel like, geez, I'm just like bumping into a wall, then this is the place to be. I can break that stuff down. And again, I can't fix it in one shot. There's no quick fix. You can ask, again, any of my students. I have a bunch of guys in their 50s, 60s, even a 74-year-old guy who's making great changes. And they know, they get it. Their comment to me is like, where were you when I was 22? Well, if they were 74, I was like 10. So anyway, carrying on with that French grip approach. If I play a couple things like the jazz ride cymbal rhythm, that's a good one to get the pendulum swinging nicely, just to recognize that balance and that fluidity of stick, right? Just bringing about enough housing to secure the stick so that it's pliable. It's got some breath and motion to it. Is that the end of the story for the jazz ride cymbal thing? No, sir. You got to go in and do your due diligence and check out all the great masters, going back to like Davey Tuff and Big Sid Catlett, Joe Jones and Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa, and then passing through, going into the Max Roach and the Art Blakey and the Philly Joe Jones and the, Tony Williams and the just historically expand. And then don't forget your rock guys. Know your Hal Blaine and your Earl Palmer and your John Bonhams and Mitch Mitchells and even Ginger Baker. He had, for me, just Cream was it. I know he did those other things, but Cream, that was a pretty weighty thing for him to come out and do. That was a phenomenal approach to rock and roll drumming. And on. Stuart Copeland as a great recognizable voice and a contributor to the musicianship of what you can do. Just being a great rocking guy and having those other backgrounds in his playing. What a great player, man. And what a great contribution. At that time when the Police were hot, all of a sudden, all the fusiony guys were getting splash cymbals and, piccolo snare drums and playing reggae grooves. Well, that was the Police, man. They were so phenomenally impressive, I think, on a great deal of musicians that, again, you got to thank Mr. Copeland for all his contributions. And you go on, you keep going and going and going. There's a bunch of guys that I would say for me that are great players. One guy that comes to mind always in terms of my world is a jazz contributor, and, having the longevity of his career and the great artists and musicians and great jazz artists that he's played with, Bill Stewart, and also a very identifiable figure. If you listen to him play one note, I go, well, that's Bill. You can just hear it. And he sounded like that right from the get-go. That's a component that I think is really special. When a drummer has such an identifiable sound that it's so recognizable, like an Alvin Jones, a Tony Williams, a Jack DeJohnette, a Peter Erskine, on and on. There's a lot of guys. And maybe some would be more nuanced and you have to listen to them a little bit longer before you get kind of like the consistency of them. But John Bonham certainly would. You turn those drums just on and get rid of all the tracks and you're going to go, it's Bonham. It's no denying that. So carrying on with that jazz ride cymbal exercise, as I'm tossing this stick up in the air, this upstroke, the follow through of it, is what I'm looking to tame and kind of bring in, again, directing my energy. So that's kind of following through on the middle beat of triplet 1 and 3. Oh, and 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm just kind of letting my opposite stick kind of kick it up to show how loose that is. I don't want to go and hammer the pad. I want to get it nice and loose and feel the pendulum swinging. When I drop down to my, what I'll call my pop stroke, I call that the pop, drop up, pop, drop up. That impact is met with, again, a certain placement of forearm falling to that threshold to produce the best rebound. If I go below, that's not going to be helpful. If I drop short, that's not going to be helpful. So you're fine tuning. Where do you need to drop? Now, I've had a lot of people go, man, you seem to sit high. Yes, I do. I want to sit on top of the drum. I can still get to the tips from here for more, let's say, touch and sensitivity, but I can also get down and let it drop a little bit further to get a good, solid, consistent rim shot for a backbeat and rock and roll, or whatever the situation calls for. It's just I found myself after many years, that weight factor that we have at our disposal, like letting your arm fall. Again, that's letting go. And I always say that's counterintuitive for drummers to let go. That's the factor that we're looking to tap into. You can still push, hit, punch a little bit. But once you know the difference, I will say, what's the difference if you don't know the difference? You really can't stand in a place and be humble to, oh, yeah, that's how that feels. You got to, really walk through those steps a little bit so you get a better evaluation. Stubbornness is not a good factor to learn things. Humbleness is probably the most, let's say, amenable quality to embrace. You're being humble. And believe me, I've had, a very stiff, stuck head when I was younger. Even in these later years, certain ideas that I had was like, oh, no, that's the way it works. And as I am so grateful to be in this phase of my life with a lot of teaching, it really brings me to a place of allowing the learning process to continue. Every student is a teacher to me. Every back pocket exercise that I've ever gotten from trying to problem solve with every student or any, specific, some guys don't need that much. Some guys do. They're all back here. They're all a byproduct of everybody I've worked with. And it's great because it's brought me more descriptiveness, more subtlety to what you can bring to the game. Some guys might stand and watch us and go like, yeah, I don't need that. That's fine. I'm not here to say, oh, if you don't do this, you're wrong. You can do a whole bunch of things, but it can also make it really efficient and effective on your playing. Again, you wouldn't know until you go through the process to see how that changes up what you can do. All I can say is that at 62, my chops feel better than ever. There's more nuance, more touch, more range. The sad factor is I'm not gigging like I used to gig, but that's been sort of a condition of my own desire not to work so much. I have 2 small children. I'm a late in the day dad. I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And teaching schedule has increased over the last 5 years to a place where I would be dead if I tried to do gigs and teach at the same time. It would not be a happy ending for me. So I have to look out for my health. And the best path for me now is to offer the great insights that I have and work with the myriad of guys that I get to work with and share my joy and passion to watch them grow and metamorphose into a different place. As in the case of one of my students yesterday, he's 54 and making great changes and really owning who he is as a really great rock drummer. That's not what he does for a living, but he's just got a great understanding of, he's played a lot of gigs. He's kept that going on with his day job. And has the passion and the wherewithal to continue to grow. And I honor that man more than anything. I love the fact that this instrument can continually push you forward. There's never an ending to it. The ending is when you put your sticks up and give up, or you decide, oh, well, I don't need to do anything, with it anymore. I can't learn. That's a defeatist attitude. There's no end to the story. This story is continually being written by you. Your ability to push forward and to really bring the best of you out is what we're after. And again, the facility being you is really important to maintain. This instrument, unlike any other instrument, is a completely physical exchange with your drum set. It's you. And if you're hitting and fussing and fighting and, kind of hitting and you feel like, geez, man, I'm getting beat up, or I can't get that speed, or I just don't feel a flow, you gotta take the matters in your hands, so to speak, and readdress how you're doing things. Change up that skill set to bring about a greater nimbleness. So one more thought just with the French grip is that's not the end of the story, because there's a whole component of German stuff that I would bring forward and, talk about, the different gear structures of having some wrist or even bringing the forearm to support the vertical bounce of a stick, depending upon what you're doing, orchestrating, maneuvering that flow with the orbit of Neptune, so to speak, and bringing it into the orbit of Mercury. Neptune, whoa, large orbit. Try playing really slow with a nice large lift and drop and get that fluidity. Not easy. But when you can tap into that and allow your tracking mechanism to really engage with every nuance of movement and understand what you're doing movement-wise as well as sticking-wise, because that's another component. Every sticking can bring out a melodic quality to what you're doing. Now you're getting into the game, man. Now you're seeing what's going on. And that flow will be elevated. Now, is it all about the maneuvering around the drum set for solos? No, but you want to have some game. I know that even in your most simple kind of pedestrian drum fills, you want a seamless connect from beat to fill to beat to fill and make that tune one breath, right? So again, those are the kinds of things that I kind of construct. And I don't know, Gilbert, are there any questions out there while we're, carrying on here, getting close to the hour? I can't hear you, so you might be muted.
Yeah, I mute myself so I won't,
Yep.
hit something and create sound while you're playing. No questions as of yet, sir.
How about
I
you?
find it.
You're engaged here, and you're a drummer, so why don't you lead the pack? Did I evoke any questions or any ideas that you want to bring forward?
Yes, what caught my attention was how you described it. You allow the stroke to fall into the surface.
Yeah.
In timpani, that's something that I've learned is especially true. The instrument is so sensitive that if you get in the way of physics and allow yourself in there, you're going to create a very bad tone.
Yes,
but if you just
exactly.
allow for it to drop,
Right.
allow it to drop, it just opens up.
Right. And the other factor of timpani that you could say is that you can't do fast rolls on a timpani, on a low tune timpani. It will kind of cancel out. Or even on a higher pitch, you can only go so fast. And a lot of my French grip concepts and movement was mostly drawn into a great timpani teacher I had at Cal State Northridge. I did a little bit of classical percussion.
Wow.
I had no business being there. I'm a drum set guy, working on my 4 mallet pieces, Mitchell Peters, and ripping out my hair. Of course, I had hair back then, but now that's gone, but like the wind. But that was aggravating. But Karen Irvin brought me a little bit of identity to those strokes and brought forward the French timpanist grip. And that, again, would bring forward the idea of you don't want to cradle the stick in French grip, because then you're just going to be hammering. If your fingers are open and moving with the body of the stick, you're going to get a nice wider tone out of that. And the same when you're playing a timpani, coming off the head. So, yeah, that's a good observation, and that's exactly right for that element of what we want to bring into the drum set. Is Freddie Gruber would say, well, this is percussion. He'd say, Bruce, percussion. And he'd like strike off the cymbal. And it always it sat in my head, but as you went along further and further and you realize the valuable tools that have been imparted for touch and that kind of stuff, and thinking about tone, you really would go like, oh yeah, man. Well, you know, I worked with a trumpet player for a good 6-year period of a jazz gig that I used to do. And this guy, probably about 26, 27 years older than me, you know, almost 30, not quite. And he had chops when he was a kid in high school. And he grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. And he was getting ready to go to whatever college he went to. And I don't remember what university. He actually got a PhD eventually in music and became a band director at the Valley College and a couple other places as well, running the big bands. And he told me, he said, one time I came in to a teacher, I was auditioning for a program, and a guy just said, man, you got all these chops, you got no tone. And he was like, what do you mean? And he said, I want you just to sit back and blow long tones. And I got to tell you, when I would play with this guy, Woody James, he had one of the most gorgeous tones.
Yes.
Really, honestly, like a tone where you just went, wow. Now that's a trumpet player. That's beautiful, man. Very lyrical, nice and wide open. And it just, again, it reminds you like every instrument has its factor of working on your tone. This is no different. This is not just a slam bam, hit the drum real hard, get a dead head and get like you're hitting a cardboard box. Get some musical identity behind the toms and bring out the melodic portion of what you have. You know, that's, I think, super, super important. And I know some guys get it, but I think less guys get it than do get it. Maybe a lot of guys get it intellectually, but they don't get the component of how do I serve that up? What do I do to make a change to get that to happen? And again, that's exactly what I do for years and years and years. And I can break it all down here, but I drag with this StreamYard is I can't put my my interface unit on. It won't recognize it. It does for Zoom, but not for StreamYard or FaceTime or Skype or any of those other mediums. But nonetheless, I think I've drawn enough imagination for people to tap into what it is I'm speaking about conceptually.
I have a question now, based on the fact that you let it drop. When you want, let's say if you're going to go into a rock or a metal gig, or just a gig that requires more power and more volume, how would you describe the stroke in that situation?
Well, a couple things. Like there's only so hard you can hit a drum before you choke the tonality, you shock it. So I'm more conditioned to allow the drum to speak in its maximum potential. But that being said, if I want a little more density, I'm not going to sit rigidly and go, I've got to sit on the balanced position of the stick. I'll draw back a little bit so I have a little more weight mass to my stick to get my backbeat. Now I'm still dropping in. That's not a thrust or a hit. I can't do that. That's against my inner principles that I've built up for years, because it'll hurt. And I'm not going to walk off the gig limping or in a sling. So, you know, I can get a pretty good crack and a good loud sound out of that. And you can be quite effective. You can lift up high. I mean, Kenny Aronoff talks about that, sitting in the core and coming up and dropping in. I mean, he might hit a little more than some of us, but you can get that and still drop in. That's for the show. The drop is still taking the weight of the stick into consideration and falling with it. And when you impact, it's, I don't want to say it's perfectly free floating, but sort of free floating. And when you impact it, bop, you suck it into the hand. You bring it in. Now, if I do a rim shot, there's an element where I don't bring it into the hand. I kind of let it kick a little bit over the hoop because I don't want to get that vibration of the crack of metal and drum head and get the vibration into my fingers just to sit inside the hand. That hurts.
Yes.
So there's an element of that where when I push it a little bit over the ledge of the hoop, where the fingers draw just a little bit open to accommodate the stick movement, so that, again, I'm not throwing that stick in and taking all that vibration into my bones. And again, that's detrimental. You want to be super cautious about that because you can seriously hurt yourself. You can damage yourself in a way. I'll tell you, man, and I know Tris would be not mad at me if I said this, but he told me, like, early on studying with me, he said, man, I had carpal tunnel before they even called it carpal tunnel. You know? So he's, you know, a product of just being a great musician. If there's somebody out there that doesn't know Tristan Bowden, check him out. You know, his big gigs, like I said, Kenny Loggins, Al Jarreau, Chicago, it doesn't get any bigger than that. He was in the heyday of Kenny Loggins on all those great hits. Working with Al Jarreau, well, you're talking the master on a lot of those tracks, Mr. Steve Gadd. What a pair of shoes to follow, man.
Yes.
But yet Tris had that stuff, man, that thing. And then to walk in and be able to take the Chicago gig for 28 years, man.
Gosh.
And be their guy. You know, that's pretty phenomenal. I mean, Chicago to me was like so huge and influential. I saw them, so grateful. I saw them in 1975. I would say that was the heyday of their career. That was like the height. And when I think back to my love of the Chicago stuff, that Danny Serafin had a huge impact on me, where I would already say like my rock and roll playing kind of had a jazzy approach to it, even though I really wasn't a jazz guy. Now I was aware of Louis Bellson and Buddy Rich because those guys were big drum stars, and all my peers would go, oh, Louis Bellson's playing with his big band. Are you going? Or Buddy Rich is going to be on the Tonight Show tonight, or Buddy Rich will be at the Carnation Plaza in Disneyland, you know, and all that stuff. So I was aware of that. I listened to that. But Danny, with his jazzy approach to, you know, great pop tunes, was so influential to me that when I listened back, I have a demo that I did when I was 18 with my brother. We had our power trio. And I listen back to that and I go, man, like all our orchestrations and our ideas were well crafted. The thing we left out was we didn't think about all the vocal stuff that we wanted to do. We just didn't. We were thinking all about the arrangement. We had all these great arrangements. And then our singing was okay. You know, we could have gone back and really just taken another day or so and figured that out. But we were kids. What do we know? But I listened back to that and I go, damn, that's pretty cool, man. Pretty kind of jazzy rock, a little bit of Bad Company influence and a little bit of some of the, like, what would be in there? I don't know, you know, like a mishmash, some Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Bad Company. But then there's that, even though we were a rock trio, there's a little bit of that Chicago kind of thing in my playing where I approached it a little bit more like that.
And we were talking to a degree about this before the stream, where you know, whatever it is, like right now, we just didn't get advice from Bruce Becker. We got advice from everybody that is taught and influenced Bruce Becker. And
I am standing on the shoulders of my influences of, you know, whether it's my first teacher, Bill James, Henry Belson, Louis' brother, Hank, my timpani teacher and mallet teacher, Karen, my Latin percussion guy, Jerry Steinholtz, man. I mean, that guy, you know, when I'd listen to folkloric, you know, like Cuban stuff, and I'd go like, all right, sounds really cool. Where's one?
Yes.
You know? It was Jerry who just went, Bruce, it's just this. And he worked with so many guys around here in Southern California, guys that are out still doing it. Brian Kilgore, Billy Holting. I think Dave Tull would be in that mix. Dave's more of a drum set guy, but I'm sure he hung with Jerry too to understand the nature of the constructs of the Brazilian and Cuban vernacular. You know, a great place. And I, you know, and Freddie, of course, the bigger influence in a myriad of things, but all that. And basically humble to all those teachers that had some element of wisdom. Even I had one lesson with Jeff Hamilton, and he gave me like a couple of like 2 tips that I never forget. I was teaching guys that were studying with him. I think his attitude was like, go to Bruce. He knows he's going to break down your technique. I don't do that. Jeff's more of a conceptual guy and certainly the master of brush playing. But I had about 4 or 5 students, and they all would go, you know, because I used to hang with Jeff with one of my students who was also studying with Jeff, Jeff would come over to this guy Tony's house. We'd shoot pool. We'd listen to Philly Joe Jones and smoke a cigar and drink Crevassier or whatever the heck we were doing back then. And I said, yeah, I'll go hang with Jeff. And like just a couple of sentences from him, it went like, yeah, man, thank you. I was on that path, but you just nudged me in the right direction.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what it is. It's about going out and collecting data.
Yes. Yes. I like the way you put it. Collecting data. That's what it is. We are melting pots of wherever we draw information from.
That's right.
And the beautiful thing you were mentioning earlier, how you would have to either wait for like somebody like Buddy Rich or somebody like him to either go live on TV or happen to do a gig or a clinic near where you lived. Now we have that and so much more.
We have those gigs all vested in on YouTube to watch. It's a as Freddie Gruber would say, as we were approaching the 21st century, Bruce, the age of information.
Yes. There is so much at our fingertips that if somebody really doesn't progress in any field, not just our
no, you're right.
our
Absolutely. Yes.
In any field, if you're not known as the person to go to in your thing, it's because you pretty much allowed that to happen.
That's right. You're not putting on your Sherlock Holmes hat and getting your spyglass out, man. It's all there. You don't have to look into the nooks and crannies as we did when we were kids. When we went to a drum clinic or a drum show, like a Louis Bellson or a whoever we saw, you were there watching the gig. You didn't have a phone in your hand. You were absorbing, you were processing. You went home and you retained maybe a couple of ideas and you'd go and work them out. And maybe it brought you to even a completely different place of what you heard, but that was you processing information and assimilating to the place where you innovate. In other words, you bring yourself into it. And now everything's kind of gifted to you. You can look at any guy and there'll be a transcription of what he's doing. And everybody wants to know, what is he doing? What is he doing? I want to know what somebody's doing. I'm not that interested. I want to build up the facility to express what's going on and tap into what I'm passionate about musically. And you can't be that other guy. That guy might wear, a size 12 shoe and you're a 9. And you're going like, well, I want to stand in this guy's shoes. Well, you can sort of, but you don't want to be that guy. You want to be you. And, in this world of having so much available information, I think there's people who still can stand out and get their voice heard.
Yes.
There's a lot of guys who can, we can all be great copyists of. That's great. I honor that. When I do any kind of cover gigs, not that I copy note for note, but I try to be sensitive to the vibe and characteristic of the music I'm playing to bring forward the element of what was going on at that time period. What was that about? What was that drummer doing? I can't be John Bonham and I can't be Ringo Starr, but I can take the essence and the joy of what I hear and bring out, some of the major essence of what we would recognize as being Ringo Starr and John Bonham to make that music come alive. If I'm doing cover tunes, to me, it's a cover tune. It's classic rock. It's like classical music. You don't change the arrangement of Für Elise from Beethoven. You play it as it was written. Yes, there's emotional interpretation, always. But you're not going to go like, it's just, that's not how it goes. You could go, well, that's an interesting twist on the theme, but can you produce it into a little bit more of the form that it was originally presented in, please?
Yes.
There's something to be learned by that.
Exactly. I totally agree. Man, Bruce, mind blown just to be able to hear your insights, your concepts, your experiences with all these greats, and it's incredible. We are humbled to be able to have you here, sir.
Well, thank you for reaching out, man. I appreciate the opportunity to speak and to contribute. And, like I say, if there's anybody out there listening to this or when it's posted afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. You want to dig deeper, this is the place to be. And I can tell you there's no more depth than what I can bring to this. I mean, that's like
No,
I got
no.
a shovel that's about 7 feet deep, man. So
Yes, and then you got a tractor right behind that.
yeah.
You're the depth of what you can what you can give now. Bruce, how lessons you provide lessons?
I
How
do.
can we learn from you?
You can go to brucebecker.com to email me regarding any questions you might have. There's a forum on my website. You can follow me on my YouTube channel. I don't put a lot of stuff up there. I put things, small amounts of things, and I don't even put them
Okay.
up that regularly. Again, that's Bruce Becker Drums on the YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram. That's Bruce Becker Drums. You can follow me on Facebook, Bruce Becker Drums. All those kinds of things are available. I'm pretty accessible. There's my website. You can read maybe a few more nuggets on somebody did a Wikipedia page on me. So that was kind of cool when that happened. I was like, oh, hey, in this day and
Yeah.
age, I made it. No, I mean,
Yeah.
what is it? I mean, it's just, again, it's like just a glorified bio and some of the things that I've done musically, which I didn't mention. I was quickly, I've been able to play with my brother we worked together for about 32 years, did a bunch of records on real jazz labels. I say that not to be condescending, but when we were working, we were on MCA Jazz, and there was like a myriad of great artists from Spyro Gyra to the Yellow Jackets to Michael Brecker and Henry Johnson, great guitar player out of Chicago. They re-released all the Impulse stuff. So it was humbling and yet very cool to look back that we were like in that space for a number of years. But I worked with Ron Carter and doing a record project with him, played a few tunes, Mike Stern, John Abercrombie, one of my great guitar heroes, the great jazz organist from Germany, Barbara Dennerlein, Russell Ferrante from the Yellow Jackets, Richie Garcia, who was on last week. Richie has played on a couple of our records. In fact, Richie had come in, I think, maybe for a couple of lessons over the last few years from me, because he's a great drum set player too. And so all those mediums, I'm easily found. If you put Bruce Becker Drums out there in your Google search, stuff's going to come up. I've done a ton of stuff for Drumeo. There's courses on Drumeo that I've contributed to. We had a very successful course that came out in 2018 called Drum Technique Made Easy that I wrote for Jared, who's a super fellow, Jared Falk, really
Yes.
on top of it guy, good guy. And, in terms of like collaborating and stuff like that, him and Dave and the staff at Drumeo, like some of the best people I've worked with. I've never felt more embraced in that world. But again, I'm on my own, so I'm available. And I'm not just a teacher to, saying, oh, well, you taught David Garibaldi or David Garibaldi studied with you or Mark Shulman. It's not like that. I'm a guy who wants to get in and dig in and advance your playing. So don't look at that as any kind of whoa, this guy might be above me. No, I've got people who started late in life. I've got a nice lady from South Carolina, who started drumming about 2 or 2.5 years ago. And I think she's been studying with me about that length of time. I've got a guy in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who didn't start playing drums till he was about 32 or 33. He's been with me for about 6 years, 5.5 years, five. Wow.
So,
this guy went from zero to being able to play the drums and playing good, solid New Orleans, bluesy, funky stuff, man, because he loves it. And that's what he wanted to facilitate. So.
Yes. And the thing that people have to understand is, yes, you've taught, some of the greats, but the reason they came to you is conceptual stuff. They wanted to broaden their insights on specific concepts, and you have insight not just on certain things from A through Z. From A through Z in your drumming, you have studied with some of the greats, and you have something to give any level of student.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, that's it. So, but anyway, I do thank you again for the opportunity and having the forum and reaching out to me, and we made it work.
Yes, we did.
Again, thanks to everybody out there for this seminar, and hope to hear from some people out there.
Yes, you will, sir. Yes, you will. And again, I Somebody just placed a comment. Thank you both. Follow Bruce Becker's YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook pages. I met him on very briefly at
Oh,
PASIC
okay.
2017. Follow his
Nice.
clinic. Yes.
Thank you, Forte drummer. I don't know who you
Yes.
are, but I'm sure if I saw you, I'd probably remember your face.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Bruce, this is your home now, sir. Every artist that comes here, this platform is yours. If you ever need anything, if you want to promote something, if you want anything that you ever want to do, the answer, I'm giving it to you. It's yes. Just tell us when and what. And
I will do this because I'm always bad on promoting things. 2 weeks from tomorrow, August 29th at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I will be conducting a masterclass that's available. If you go to my webpage, there should be some notification about that. There's some stuff flying around on Facebook about that. And that will be comprising of all about the feet. It's called Getting to the Bottom of It. And I approach the feet like I do the hands. There's a lot of concept that is in keeping with that. I've got, many different little ways of approaching playing pedals to add more nimbleness and more dance quality to what you can do. And again, bringing about more flexibility and a few more different little, let's say, approaches to assist you in your approach. So if you're interested, you can, I'll probably, now that you made the offer, Gilbert, I'll probably maybe throw something your way and just let you know. So on your website or on your Facebook page and all that stuff.
Bruce, what you can do, please, sir, if you can make a small short video the way you did for our promo, and then I'll work it up. And I'll play it at the beginning of our streams.
Okay,
and
excellent.
Post it. So please do that, and we'll make it look really good and sharp to share it with people, please.
Matt G used to work for Drum Magazine. Nice, Matt.
Nice.
I did actually a interview just to Matt with Phil Hood.
Okay.
We did like a live thing on, I guess, for the online version of Drum Magazine a couple years ago regarding Freddie Gruber. It was sort of a little tribute to Freddie. Anyway, I got to run. I know you got to run, and thanks to everybody. I just got a little bit of a time constraint. I have my 2 kids and 5 and 8 years
understandable.
Papa from left to right, so I got to get in there.
You were gracious enough to give us a lot more than we had agreed. You said an hour, and we're up to almost an hour and a half. Thank you so much.
You got it, brother.
Again,
yeah.
Hit us up if anything that we can help you, please, Bruce. Please, ladies and gentlemen, it's been great hanging out with you. Really enjoy this times. We will see you in the next one.
Right on, man.
Peace.
Cheers. Peace.